Peace, everybody. Welcome to Capital Combat. The name says it all. It's Hakeem coming at you, and sorry for the delay, but I'm going to get right into the Errol Spence versus Mikey Garcia recap. And what we're going to do is talk about the technical adjustments that Errol Spence made to make sure that he came out with the landslide victory that he did. Talk about that in relation to what we thought would happen in the preview video, and then, pontificate on what's next for both fighters. So join in on the conversation. Hit me in the comment section below. Subscribe, because I watched a lot of videos myself, being that it's been a week since the fight has happened, and I haven't heard any of the things that I'm about to discuss with y'all discussed on these videos. There may be some out there, but for the mainstream outlets, we haven't talked about the technical nuances of this fight. So I want to get into that and show you guys why Errol Spence was able to technically decimate Mikey Garcia in a virtual, so here I am type of performance. So in the preview video, and what most people believed, that in this fight we all figured that Mikey would be walked down by Errol Spence because of the immense size difference, the difference that was going to be in the physical strength, the range, and just the power of the two fighters. But Spence and his trainer Derrick James had other ideas. They wanted to make a statement saying, I am not just a walk him down, break him down type of fighter. I can do whatever I please. So against a master boxer like Garcia, they were able to accomplish that. So how were they able to do this? So first, I know in the preview video we talked about how Errol Spence has an underrated boxing IQ and an underrated boxing ability. Still thought he was going to use that to intelligently walk him down. I did mention he was going to use his jab a lot, which he did. But this came down to the feet. And if you guys are familiar with Rob and I's videos, you'll always hear me say, if your feet ain't right, nothing's right. And this fight started at the feet, and that's where Errol Spence got his advantage. Now, a lot of times you hear people say, when you're fighting the southpaw, or if you're a southpaw fighting the orthodox fighter, you get your lead foot outside of the other fighter's lead foot. In this case, Spence was able to put his foot where he wanted to land the punches he needed to land. If he wanted to land his jab, he kept his foot on the outside. When he started to want to land those lefts, he placed his foot on the inside. And on top of that, he distributed his weight a little bit differently than you usually see from a fighter that fights in the style that Errol Spence does. If you look at Mikey Garcia, his stance is very even. His feet are shoulder width apart. He likes to bounce in and out. And you saw him, especially in the second round, catch Errol as he was coming in, and also be able to come forward with lead left hooks and 1-2s to close that distance that came from their height and reach. That came from the height and reach disparity that he had. So what Spence was doing to lessen the opportunities for this, because like I said, him and his coach had Mikey scouted completely. So what Spence would do is he would get into the range, but then he leaned his body back. So he pressured him off the back foot. So a lot of times when you hear people say they're boxing on the back foot, you usually think of someone retreating and playing a counter puncher. But in Errol Spence's case, he was using it to control the distance that Mikey Garcia had to cover in order to land a punch on him. So he's coming forward, leaning back on his left leg, but still using his jab because he could still reach Mikey with that distance. And then he would spring forward with a body punch or a left up top, which would put just a little bit more oomph on it and change the distance of where it was coming from, because Mikey's expecting the jab range to be a little bit different because of how his body was positioned. So he's leaning back on that left foot, and then he springs forward, closes that distance, and it's less of a window for Mikey to get out of the way. To Garcia's credit, he did block and parry a lot of shots, but because of the output of Spence, lessened the amount of opportunities that Garcia had to counter Spence, which is one of the things that we believe that he was trying to do during that fight. He was waiting for an opportunity to catch Spence coming in, which I think might have been their game plan in the first place, but it didn't work out that way. So on top of that, we have to talk about Errol Spence's supreme conditioning. This man threw over 1,000 punches in this fight, and he threw a lot of jabs. That right hand was working overtime. We don't really see him throwing that many punches usually, but in order to shut down a master boxer like Garcia, this is what he had to do. Now, we talked about in the preview video how he gave Floyd Mayweather all he could handle in their sparring sessions years ago when Mayweather was active and Mayweather had him in his camp. And we know in order to hang with Floyd Mayweather in the sparring sessions, you're going to have to be sharp mentally and sharp physically. So those of us who paid attention to that knew Spence had it in him. He just hadn't had to showcase that yet. So he unveiled that to the world 2 weeks ago. Was over a week ago. Anyway. So that's pretty much how he was able to outbox a master boxer. He kept his feet where they needed to be to land the punches he needed to land. He adjusted his body so he could disguise his range on Mikey for him to misjudge where his punches were going to land. And then he used his supreme conditioning to outwork and outland Garcia by an immense amount of total strikes landed versus total strikes thrown. I don't think Mikey Garcia landed more than 100 punches in the fight total. Errol Spence landed close to about 400 or so. I don't know the exact numbers, but the disparity between the two were very large. So, you get late into the fight, and then Errol begins to pressure him smartly, but still knowing he could go for the knockout. He went to prove a point that I could stay on the game plan for 12 rounds and be focused enough to execute this game plan that his trainer himself put together. So that showed the IQ that a lot of people weren't giving him credit for. We said in the preview video that it was underrated, and that underrated, you know what I'm trying to say. We underrated him, and we underrated how underrated his IQ was. We did say, he hung in there with Floyd Mayweather, but he showed a Mayweather type performance where you take a guy and you completely negate everything he does well and then just demoralize him over the course of 12 rounds. That's very high level. He could have went in there and tried to get him out of there, which is what we all expected him to do. But he decided that he was going to show us that his brain is just as dangerous as his brawn. So we got a very dangerous fighter on our hands in Errol Spence. And I really look forward to seeing who he fights next. We've got Sean Porter. We got Keith Thurman. You got Danny Garcia still in the hunt. There's a few other guys that are in that division. You got Manny Pacquiao, Terrence Crawford. There's a lot of big names at the top that all have the opportunity to fight each other and find out who's the best. And it's going to be an exciting time to watch all of those guys get together and wait for the dust to clear to find out who's on top. I'm thinking this is going to be a 4 to 5 year type of tournament between these guys, not an actual organized tournament, but over the course of the next 4 to 5 years, they're all going to fight each other. We're going to find out who the best is over that period of time. I know everybody wants them to fight each other back to back to back, but I doubt that happens. As far as with Mikey Garcia, I think he may settle in at 140. I think he believes he can capture a title at 147. Unfortunately, I don't think any of the belt holders now are going to be right for him to be able to defeat. He's going to have similar issues that he had with Spence in the size, reach, and strength. And they're all very good boxers as well. So he's going to have the same issues that he had with Spence against those other guys. Terrence Crawford has an excellent boxing IQ. Keith Thurman has an excellent boxing IQ. Sean Porter has an excellent boxing IQ. Danny Garcia has a top-notch boxing IQ. I think his is a bit lower than the other guys, but his is up there as well, which is why he competes with those gentlemen. So that's really all I got for you guys. Like I said, leave your comments down below. I hope you caught Rob's initial reaction to it immediately after the fight. He should be back on the East Coast probably at the end of this week. So we'll link up, discuss our thoughts, get together for the next set of fights that are coming up. And we'll see you guys in those next videos. So subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can get them all. And until then, fight on.
This is round one and you've already lost. They don't seem to see that everything we've done is coming and gone. My fists are on fire, I perform till I perspire. My demons are in a rage, keep thinking that it's a game. I kick rhyme, hurricane, I told them I don't play, I'm liquid.
The Black Street Fighter.